Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to Cosmic Consciousness with Kassia. Today I'm going to be doing a slightly different kind of video for you guys. We're going to be examining the transiting Pluto as he moves through these final degrees of Capricorn and into the 0-degree point of Aquarius. But we're going to be doing it in a slightly different fashion than usual. We're going to be reading the Chandra symbols that are associated with each of these degrees of Capricorn. So I'm going to explain a little bit before we get started on what the Chandra symbols are, or the Chandra symbols rather, as well as a little bit of the energy of Pluto and why Pluto is important right now. Those of you who follow this channel will be familiar with Pluto as a planet that represents the ultimate evolutionary impulses of our soul. So we can really look at this overall evolutionary and soul energy if we examine the energies of Pluto. Because Pluto is a collective planet, these energies are experienced not only on an individual basis, but very heavily on a collective basis as well. Because Pluto moves so slowly and only traces over a couple degrees of the zodiac every year, the energies are that much more precise, I guess you could say. The image that I was given that sort of relates to the energy and the power of Pluto when it's moving over a couple degrees of the zodiac was of a magnifying glass. If you were to focus a magnifying glass in the sunlight on a piece of paper, the energy of the sun channeled through that magnifying glass would be so intense that it would set the paper on fire. And so that's the energy of Pluto. Pluto in this analogy would be the magnifying glass. And so these cosmic energies filtered through Pluto really illuminate whatever it is that Pluto is focusing on. This is an area of intense scrutiny. And many of us experience this when we're scrutinizing the shadow, these areas of our lives, of ourselves, of the collective consciousness that generally hide in the shadows being brought to light. It's being dragged up so that we can look at it, so that we can heal it and transform it, and therefore embrace more of our power in this lifetime and grow exponentially as souls. And so this is what Pluto is doing this year in 2022 at 26 and 27 degrees of Capricorn. As Pluto moves into 2023, Pluto will be adding more degrees to this and will be, and let me look, I wrote down the exact degree numbers here so that we don't get mixed up here. Yeah, this year in 2022, Pluto's going to be moving back and forth between 26 and 28 degrees of Capricorn. In 2023, Pluto is going to move back and forth between 27 degrees of Capricorn and 0 degrees of Aquarius. And by 2024, Pluto will be stationed squarely in the sign of Aquarius. I have a timetable that I'm going to put in the description box below for you guys of the Pluto in Aquarius transit so that we understand when Pluto hits that 0 degree of Aquarius mark. Because with the retrogrades and the direct motions of Pluto, he's going to hit 0 degrees of Aquarius and then move back into Capricorn and so on and so forth. On November 19th of 2024, Pluto is going to enter Aquarius and remain in Aquarius until 2043 without regressing back into Capricorn again. But we're going to have a few years here from now until 2024 when Pluto is going back and forth and really fine-tuning these final degrees of Aquarius, or Capricorn rather, and then moving into Aquarius. So we're closing out this era that began in 2008 of Pluto in the sign of Capricorn and beginning to open up this era of Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. It's very, very exciting. Many people, you may remember this from some of the mentions in my videos or from other astrologers that you follow. A lot of people are talking about the Pluto return of the United States occurring during this time. This year in 2022, Pluto hit the same degree of the zodiac that it was located during the American Revolution. And this is the first time that Pluto has returned to 26, 27 degrees of Capricorn since. So this was a really big deal. And we can see the unraveling and the dismantling on a worldwide level, right? Because this is a collective energy. The entire world is experiencing an unraveling and a transformation of everything that Capricorn represents. So this is structures, authority, right? Power, collective power, personal power, industries and entities that hold power over. Right? So we're seeing this worldwide, but we're really seeing this intensely in the United States because of the fact that we are having this Pluto return. And I don't think it's any coincidence that the United States was founded during these final degrees of Capricorn, when what is now the United States was rebelling against and setting themselves apart from Great Britain. Right? And so it's that energy, that revolutionary energy. As Pluto traces these final degrees, he's completing a cycle that he began in 2008 when he entered the sign of Capricorn. And then as we move forward from November 19th, 2024, Pluto is going to be doing the same thing in the sign of Aquarius. And we will talk about that more when we get to that point. And so the Chandra symbols are similar in sort of the way that we understand them to the Sabian symbols. Anyone who's familiar with the Sabian symbols, these are channeled phrases or words that represent each of the degrees of the zodiac. So every single degree of every single sign in the zodiac has a Sabian symbol that was channeled to represent the energies or complement the energies of that degree of each sign. For example, 1 degree of Aries has a Sabian symbol, 2 degrees of Aries has a Sabian symbol, and this goes all the way through the zodiac. Now, we have another set of symbols, but these, instead of being phrases or words, are images. And these are called the Chandra symbols. And these were channeled by another medium, another clairvoyant. And so the book that we're going to be reading from is 360 Degrees of Your Star Destiny, a Zodiac Oracle by Elias Lonsdale. If anyone is interested and wants to look more into this book, it can be really fun to look up the different degrees of your planets and see the energies and the imagery that is linked to them. See if you can relate to that, what it stirs up within you. And that's what I want everyone to do as I go through reading these. I'm not going to do a lot of commentary on each of the excerpts. I want you to really sink into the imagery, sink into the words. It starts with what the image is, and then the author sort of breaks down the energy with multiple phrases. And so I want you guys to really feel into that. And it paints a really profound picture of Pluto's transit through these final degrees of Capricorn into 0 degrees of Aquarius. I was just looking at it out of curiosity, and I found it to be so stunningly accurate that I just had to share it with you guys. So I hope that you enjoy this and it is fun for you. And as I said, the dates of Pluto moving in and out of that 0 degree of Aquarius here are going to be listed in the timetable below. So you can see how it's dipping and then retrograding back into Capricorn, dipping back into Aquarius, all the way until it anchors firmly in Aquarius in 2040, or until 2043 rather. And so this timetable that we're reading for is going to be 2022, where we currently are, all the way into 2023, and really leading up into 2020, the beginning of 2024 as well. And we're going to start with 26 degrees of Capricorn. It was about mid-January, I want to say, that Pluto moved through those final minutes of the 25 degree of Capricorn and hit 26. But we're going to start with 26, and we're going to go forward from there. Oh yeah, this book starts at 1 degree. There's no 0 degree mark. So we're just going to be reading until 30 degrees of Capricorn. All right, so 26 degrees of Capricorn says, a solitary grave in the midst of a cornfield. Locating inside grief, grimness, stark solitude, and lonely, barren stretches, bringing into these places a spark of life. Assigned to sweat it out, serve, do what's in remote and unappealing setting, do what's needed in remote and unappealing settings and contexts. Skillful and adroit in holding to something vibrant and powerful, even as death, destruction, and the ravages of the outer prevail almost everywhere. Compelled to keep most of the inner brightness bottled up inside, and to overtly emphasize the straightest and most acceptable version of what is carried. Made to hold firmly and fiercely to the X factor, the missing ingredient, but to represent the self as traditional or conventional, non-threatening or perfectly legitimate. given to occasional outbursts of inner world power, uncontainable and impetuous, yet on the whole almost suppressive to the vital spark, convinced avidly that only what fits the picture can be shown. At the outpost assigned, what really serves is to take on the gray colorings, the brown and the drab and the commonplace, while not being remotely convinced by this charade internally. It is only an outfit thrown together to meet an alien situation. All of life feeling like a strange assignment, an enigmatic riddle. Nothing adds up. What are we here for? What's it really all about? Going ahead with it anyway, bearing down and seeing everything through. Just knowing something else will come of it if we play along, making the most of our chance to get in there and deposit what is often restricted to a subtle rendering. The vision, the purpose, the will are strong, powerful, yet held sharply away. The overt framework looms large. It takes great perseverance to penetrate this apparent lost cause. And what I wanted to add here as well is we're going to, as Pluto retrogrades and then moves direct and then retrogrades again over these next few years, we're going to be revisiting. And so we start out with 26, then we move into 27, then we move back into 26, and so on and so forth. And so we'll see how these energies interlap and interlace with each other. So it's not a linear progression, right? We're constantly looping back. Like the spiral, looping back on ourselves. So 27 degrees of Capricorn says, a long mirrored hallway lit with candles. Seeing lucidly where we are going, where we are coming from and why. Granted second sight to accompany our journey through the world with a sharp gaze that pierces all appearances and reveals what is ordinarily both obscure and confusing. Almost riveted to the spot in rapt fascination at what is seen and revealed. Able to go just about anywhere with this faculty, but typically transfixed by the implications, the reverberations, to the point of perhaps just witnessing and observing with an open eye. Especially keen at discerning what is most vital and essential, and holding to this line of inquiry and realization. Not wishing to waste any time or effort with secondary factors, driven by magnitude, purpose, meaning, and value. Caught in a paradox. Do we go higher or deeper, forward or backward, and can we really sense which is which? For the fascination lies in whatever lights up ahead. There are myriad influences at work. Can we differentiate between those that will offer us a progressive greater path through and beyond, and those that will detain us in the old karmic places a good long while? If we cannot, then it will turn out that those ancient places are lit up afresh and provide the key to the journey until they are worked through completely. Such passages or cycles, brief or extended, have a theme and an inner power to them that is so immense that any further journeying might seem out of the question and not to be attempted this time around. Yet strangely, at a key juncture, all of this can turn rapidly into an opening that goes straight to the heights. No turn of the spiral is entirely convincing. It's just too familiar and already known somehow. Yet just around that bend, the infinite abides and watches closely, awaiting its cue. Then we have 28 degrees of Capricorn. A mirror covered with a fine film of dust. Seen through a glass darkly. Remembering the way it's always been. Consciousness glued to the scene of past visions, old cycles, everything that has gone on previously and seems to be repeating all over again. Doubt coloring all perceptions. Self-judgment hounding the viewer. A bias against the self and all its old familiar worlds and those people. A bias against the self and all its old familiar worlds and those who people those worlds. Suspicion. Seeing the worst and looking for flaws. An introspective frequency. So many inner voices saying, this is what you're like. There it is again. Susceptible to the influence of negative opinions, beliefs, assumptions. Yet the need here is to constellate all this, to work it out. The self is given over to a greater task. This involves the collective purging of ghosts. The self takes these things on as its own, but the burden of responsibility lies with us all. It is a reckoning, a calling up of shadows, a bearing of the soul. It is a clearing of the ancient decks. Sometimes we get tangled up in these wastelands, for it is so fascinating and compelling to be in on the bad news, in which we have all been so very lost for so very long. The task is graphic and explicit. Take on and take up all the under stuff, see it through and be done with it. The hardest part is to be done with it. We get caught in the cycles and keep on looking in that rearview mirror. There is an awakening possible amid this shadow task and its endless ripples. We come to realize that we can release any and all blame as we see the whole picture and cease demanding that it should have been otherwise. All is as it needs to be. And 29 degrees of Capricorn reads, an architect carefully surveying old ruins. He sees something. He witnesses how what once was great becomes lost over time. When he goes into it as he must, he realizes that there was something inherent in the greatness that was flawed. He then gives himself the task of tracking down the flaws, of obsessing over what went wrong, and seeking to teach himself and others the lessons involved in the greatness that goes for a tumble and loses its glory. This study, this research, this investigation cuts close to the bone. Just about everything is implicated. Just about everybody is part of the syndrome. The further you look, the greater the evidence that falsehood, corruption, distortion of every kind is at the crux of what has made the world such a mess. It is very hard to believe in anything else when you fill your screen of awareness with doubts and proofs that doubt is legitimate and the only reasonable attitude. Then the path becomes one of finding an integration after empowering consciousness to take charge. This is quite a challenge. He must find proof that there is something worth championing in this world that can endure and stand up to inspection. Sadly, if you impose skepticism on what is observed, you skew your experiment and render it very hard to generate sufficient space to foster what can reveal a whole different side to life. The only way the skeptical mindset can outwit itself in this tight predicament is if a vision is uncovered, a lost track retraced, an ancient hunch restored to the light of day. Then the one who has gone so far into the modern vantage point may be propelled beyond it. In order to see the scope and magnitude of what is really here, when you strip yourself of all negative assumptions whatsoever. And one thing that I actually want to point out here is that the way that they do this is that they are going from, they have 30 degrees of Capricorn in here. And so really the way that we do astrological charts most times is 29 degrees being the final degree, and then we move on to 0 degrees of the next sign. So they don't have a 0 degrees, they have a 30 degrees of the ending sign instead. So as we're looking at 30 degrees of Capricorn, we can also translate to this into 0 degrees of Aquarius. This is kind of the marker that's moving us into the energy of Aquarius. And so this is as Pluto starts, those are the final degrees of Capricorn, the trajectory of energies that, like we said, is interlacing, flip-flopping back and forth, moving fluidly from these different reference points, these different points of expansion and regression, right? And then we're moving into this energy. And then from this energy back into those old energies as we need to clear more. And I want to use the word excavate more before then moving freshly into these new energies again. And then we will anchor into these new energies in 2024, the later half, the fall of 2024. So Capricorn 30 or Aquarius 0, however you want to interpret it, says, blue morning glories growing up a tall trellis. If you shoot high, if you aim for the stars and never let them out of your sight, you will attain mighty vistas of seeing and knowing and being above ordinary conscious awareness. You will live a higher frequency existence independent of your outer life, in which you are tapped for greater purposes as a matter of course. The bleed through from these inner plane activities and awarenesses will be powerful yet hard to fathom. You are seldom good at reading such signs. They defy the logic of outer practical existence, so you usually reduce the evidence to something we can handle. But in reality, the overtone becomes a dominant motif even in the midst of life. You cannot shrug off a stature, a magnitude, a bearing. Those with eyes to see can glimpse through you worlds within worlds, secrets and mysteries untold. Can you manifest in some meaningful way a fragment of this infinite reality? Can you gather to yourself the courage to face what it means to be tall, erect, and inwardly aligned with the axis of the world in ways you seldom can believe in, much less objectively bring through? To fulfill this destiny task and its outward ripples, you will need to apprentice yourself to a path in life that tempers and steadies and matures your inherent knowingness. You will have to master a discipline, be adept in an art or science that calls forth arduous effort and striving. Only then, after the basics have been taken on, will you have the constancy and stability to forge the path that is in you and make it in some small measure of a reflection of what you are spiritually and cosmically all the time. I'm going to read that last line again. Only then, after the basics have been taken on, will you have the constancy and stability to forge the path that is in you and make it in some small measure a reflection of what you are spiritually and cosmically all the time. Everything about it is a tall order. You ask a lot of yourself. You demand that you obey the law of destiny all the way through. So that's really powerful, those energies. And if you really sink into those, maybe give those another listen and think about even the past from like 2020 until now, right? But definitely this year, these energies, how we've been feeling this kind of growing. This is really where we're at collectively in so many ways. This examining of our own shadow, this examining of the past in order to prevent ourselves, excuse me, from making the same mistakes, right? When history is not acknowledged and understood, it is doomed to be repeated. And so it's that understanding, that combing back through our history so that we don't have to repeat those same mistakes, the ancestral healing, so much in there. And then the embracing our path, finding a way to walk our talk, finding a way to live authentically, and to have our outer reality mirror what's inside of us, finding that purpose and committing to it, right? Fine-tuning those gifts and abilities, those skills that will be necessary as we move forward from here. The crumbling of the old and the birthing of the new. What did it say? Like blue flowers running up a trellis or something like that. Really beautiful. So I hope you guys enjoyed that and found it as fun as I did to kind of read through that and see how those energies really mirror what we're experiencing, not only in the United States with our Pluto return, but worldwide as a collective evolutionary energy. If you are new to this channel and you enjoyed this video, there's lots more like this. We talk a lot about astrology. We do a lot with tarot, pretty much anything and everything ascension related. So if you like the vibe, join the tribe. Anyone who enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you know somebody else who would enjoy this as well, go ahead and share it with them. There are links down below if you feel so moved to donate to the channel. I love you guys. You are beautiful. You are incredible. And I will talk to you soon. Bye.